So it's a real pleasure to kick off this session with Senay Sokullu, who's a senior lecturer in economics in the School of Economics at the University of Bristol. So she's local, which is great. She has basically a background in economics and studied for quite a long time in Toulouse in France for her master's and a PhD. And she works primarily in terms of her research around non-parametric methods, so methods that don't put too many assumptions, I guess, on the form of the data in some sense. And today she's going to sort of be talking about some of her work around e-commerce platforms that we all rely on nowadays, especially in terms of Amazon, I guess, and eBay and all these sorts of things. So I'll hand over to Senay to tell us more.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't need to say that I am from the School of Economics, but I am also a member of the Center for Evidence-Based Public Services, which is a center established within the School of Economics. And yeah, I just wanted to make the, advertorial of it. And also, I'm a Turing Fellow. So this talk I will be talking about e-commerce platforms, but it's not just going to be from my work, but I also put some evidence from other people's work. I will be referencing to their works, and I will try to show you some facts that the data tells us from some of these platforms. And some of the data will be the proprietary data that will be given to us by the platform itself. But some of us, unfortunately, not given, and we had to scrape it, or the authors had to scrape it. So then it makes the life a little bit more difficult when that's the case. Anyway, so I always start with this thing like digital economy, which is like quite important these days, because this digitization didn't only change the way that we store data or we transmit data, but it also led to new business models, and e-commerce platforms are one of these models. And why we are so curious about them, because they are different than the, let's say, traditional markets that we used to and we studied in economics. So they are creating new challenges for us and for the policymakers. And as I said, e-commerce platforms is one of the products of these new economies. So I'll try to show you some facts from data. Before going there again, let me tell you a little bit more about how we study these e-commerce platforms in economics. So these are what we called considered under two-sided platforms, okay? And what we have in these type of industries, we have a platform that is serving to two separate end users. And the benefit of one side of the end user, let's say the side one, depends on how well the platform is doing on side two, or vice versa. And we call these things between these two sides, network externalities. So in case of e-commerce platforms, for instance, as a seller, you're more likely to put your product on Amazon if you know that Amazon is reaching loads of buyers. Or as a buyer, you're more likely to go to a platform where you know that you can reach lots of sellers or lots of different products. And this is one of the things that is kind of that is making these industries a little bit different than the traditional markets that we see in economics. And it's one of the things that also gives the platform, let's say the supplier, quite a bit of power, because he can exploit these externalities in its pricing decisions, okay? So, and it's not just the e-commerce platforms that we can study under these type, under two-sided industries. There are many other things around us that we are seeing at the moment, like Airbnb, dating sites, game consoles, the magazines, journals, or credit card associations, all right? So that's a little bit of a background. So, and to give a little bit information of why, again, e-commerce platforms, we are so interested in them, because they contribute a lot to the economics, to the economy of the world. And I'm going to give you some figures from the UK, and some of these figures are thanks to the National Statistics Office. and ONS, Office for National Statistics. So for this one is showing us the growth rate of online and offline retail shopping in United Kingdom. And then you can see that the online retail shopping growth rate is much larger than all the other ways. Okay? And when we look at the e-commerce sales, you can see that it's close to 700 billion pounds in the UK. These are quite important facts. And when we look at the internet retail sales as a percentage of total retail sales in the UK, again, thanks to ONS, you can see that in January 18, from around 18% to today, it went up to around 28%. And you can recognize these peaks. They were the times that we were locked in our homes, that we do all our shopping online. And when we look at the most popular e-commerce websites in the UK, you can see that Amazon is the first by about 35%, followed by eBay. So these are e-commerce platforms. These are not only the online retailers, these are the e-commerce platforms. Again, they are contributing a lot to the economy, and they make a huge part of these online retail sales. And one last background is from the iPhone shopping apps that is downloaded most in February 2022. Again, Amazon is the second leading one. So, what am I going to tell you, or the facts that I'll be looking at for the rest of this talk? Some questions that we might have in mind, or that may make us to prefer to do online shopping. Okay, so one of them is variety. If we want to buy a book, do we prefer, when we search for it, to see 20 sellers selling the same book? Do we go to these platforms because of this, rather than just going to Waterstones? Okay. Another thing is the search cost. Is it costless to just look for the products sitting from our chair? Okay. And reputation scores. We use these platforms because we have information about how good the sellers are, thanks to the scores they have, because people who already bought items, they do rate them. And then also, well, they give us some recommendations, especially Amazon, right? You have the buy box that you can directly click, Amazon recommends, and then you get the product. So, let's start with variety. Let's start with it because I contributed to that. So using data from priceminister.fr, which is now acquired by Rakuten, and then it's called Rakuten France. We had data from the platform given to us, thankfully, so we didn't have to scrape. And what I did, I looked at the effect of variety on buyer preferences. And I showed that, yes, we want variety. We do like to see lots of sellers selling the same product, but up to a point, okay? So this graph shows that so this is our benefit that we get from variety, and this is the number of sellers. So it shows that we do like it up to a point, up to around, let's say, 17, 18, and then our benefit starts to decrease. And these are the bits that I don't have that much data points, so it's, let's say, its predictive power is less good. So, but why, right? So it could be because there are search costs, we don't want to go over 50 sellers, or we have limited attention, we have limited time, so we check the first 10, and then we make our decision, and then we don't care for the rest. So that was the first question. What about search costs, right? So we often evaluate only, the previous graph just showed only a handful of products, even there are loads of sellers, and it's also shown that we don't often buy the cheapest product, everything else equal. We don't buy the cheapest product, everything else equal. Why? I mean, as a rational agent, everything else equal, you should buy the cheapest product, right? But again, this is because what they attributed to search costs, because we do not really search all the items there. So I'm going to show you two graphs and tables from two different studies. One is coming from eBay, and the other is a work written by my colleagues at Bristol. The other is coming from Price Minister. So the eBay paper uses this, what we would call in economics, kind of natural experiment, that eBay changed its design in May 2011 when you search for products. So before, you were getting kind of, not that random, but the list that is mixed, okay? And after the redesign, you start getting things a bit, more tidy. So you have new tab here that you can head-to-head compare the new items, for instance. So what happened after this design? Basically, eBay made it easier for you to compare the products, right? And this paper showed that they checked the posted prices of items in these 5 categories, the transacted prices, and number of transactions before and after the redesign. And you see the prices decrease after the redesign, and number of transactions increase. So it's not that they made it easy. It's not only for consumers find the products easier, but because now they can compare products that are closer to each other easier, they make the competitiveness of the product, they increase the competitiveness of the platform. So then these sellers who are competing with each other, they had to kind of charge more competitive prices. So there are search costs, and when you help to reduce these search costs, it might help the buyers. And a similar graph coming from the price minister is that here we have the number of transactions per product, and here you can see the price dispersion. Okay, when a product is more popular and there are more sellers selling that product, you can see that the price dispersion is higher. The ratio between highest price to lowest price is larger. Again, this is all due to search costs, because as we cannot go over all the sellers very quickly at the same time, they are able to charge us sometimes non-competitive prices. So search costs do exist, even we think that it's so easy to buy stuff now just clicking on the screen of our smartphones. What about reputation? How many of you are checking the reputation or the rank score of the seller before buying, right? So, me too, but I also read the reviews, and if you're doing that, that is good, that I realized. So, data from eBay, this is proprietary data again, given by eBay because Steve Tadelis was doing consultancy for eBay as a chief economist. This is the distribution of the reputation scores. It starts at 98%. So when you think that you're buying something from a highly scored seller, which has a score of 98%, you're actually buying it from the least good seller, from the worst seller, given that distribution. So these scores are biased. Why it's biased? First of all, at those times that they use this data from eBay, when as a buyer you score the seller could see it, and then they could score you back. So it was costly. You didn't want to get bad score from the seller as a buyer. So if you had a bad experience, you didn't rate at all. Okay. And apart from that, people have tendency to just enter the good score because writing bad reviews, they don't like that. So one way to get around this, the writers propose, is to take into account silent transactions. Okay? What does it mean? You need to weight these scores by the total number of transactions. When you do that, let me skip to that graph before showing you the other one. When you do that, this is the nice, non-skewed, which almost look normal, like quite normal distribution you get. Like you have some average scores, you have the low ones, you have the higher ones, perfect. And this evidence is there, not only on eBay, that the reputation scores are biased, is also, I show that in my work, again, using data from Price Minister. Here, 94% of the observations have scored, of the sellers have scored 4 or above. And 85% of them have score 4.5 and above. So think twice when you're looking at the scores next time. And the last bit of thing that I want to talk, I'm not sure how I'm doing in terms of time. The last thing that I want to talk about is the recommendation systems. Especially, we are very much interested, in economics at the moment, we are very much interested in the buy box algorithm of Amazon. What it makes, a seller or product, maybe you have information about this. Yeah, exactly. So, well, as we don't have the information, we are trying to get that information, and we are trying to convince ourselves or the policymakers, well, maybe they don't mean bad. All they want to do is to let us buy the cheapest, the best quality product. They are not trying to steer us to their own product, or, So because of that, lots of people at the moment is looking at the Amazon data, especially try to understand how the products are getting that buy box. Buy box is the thing. So when you look, when you search for the good you want to buy, sometimes you directly have that buy now button next to it, but sometimes you're shown list of other goods that you need to go through. You cannot just buy now that good. So how do those products get into buy box? There are some evidence from fresh PhD students from Princeton. That is, they were out on the market this year. So they show that more than 50% of the time, it's the cheapest item that is going into buy box. So Amazon doesn't mean it that badly. They're trying to give us the cheap item. And around 29% of the time, it's the second cheapest item. So most of the time, they're trying to give us the quality but cheaper item. But let's get into a little bit more detail. So overall, in the 99% of the time, it's the sellers that is fulfilled by Amazon. So these are the guys who are paying an extra fee to the Amazon, and Amazon is doing their inventory, delivery, and all these things for them. Like, they are fulfilled by Amazon. So, well, 99% of the time, these are the guys that are getting into buy box. So then the question is, it's the case because once they're fulfilled by Amazon, you get a good service, so they should be on the buy box. Or is it the case that Amazon kind of say, I'll give you the service, but you will also be more likely to get, your product will be more likely to get bought because I'm going to put it into buy box. So there is a correlation, but we don't know. We're trying to understand the causation. Yeah, thank you. And but still, 63% of the time, it's the lowest price item again, which is kind of good for us. And if you look at the Amazon products that are in the buy box, again, 99% of the time it's fulfilled by Amazon, because it's Amazon product, but it's more than half of the time, it's always the lowest price item. So I think we can still trust the recommendation system. You can go for it because they don't mean that badly, at least not for us, let's say, not for us, the consumers. As I'm running out of time and I don't have anything else to say, there is lots of data, but the problem is, for us, the economists, policymakers, is access to data, because not always we can get access to this data. And hopefully with the Digital Markets Act and all these initiatives, maybe we could have access to that data, and then we can answer more questions. And these graphs and or results that I show you, they don't even have any economic modeling manipulation. These are like raw facts that you get from data. Yeah, I mean, that's another, hopefully, a good area that data scientists will work and answer some questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Senay. Is there any questions? We've got sort of 5 minutes, if anyone has any questions. One question I had was about, so you mentioned about there's some laws or acts coming in around digital commerce. Could you tell us a little bit
Competition and Market Authority in the UK, they already passed the Digital Markets Act. And European Commission, it's been like, I think, almost a month that they also passed the Digital Market Acts. Because from the point of view of economists, we are interfering with these companies, big tech or big digital companies, a bit ex post. Once they reach that power, once they have that market power, once they abused our data, then we try to regulate them. So the idea is, can we try to start doing this ex ante? But I am not sure how we can do it ex ante. I mean, we can't even do it quite well ex post. But yeah, I mean, there is lots of work and policy debate going on from the competition regulation point of view. Yeah.
Any other questions? There must be one out there. No.
So I can make a comment on the buy box. Yeah, and I have no idea how it worked, but I knew the guy who did it. And it's super interesting, your data, because yeah, it's price, but it's also delivery time and reputation. And so what you're sort of showing is, I think, so FBA tends to be more efficient delivery than third-party sellers, which is why I think it's being selected over a third-party seller. But it's interesting that then you see between the FBA and the Amazon, the percentage time that Amazon is selected against FBA is almost exactly the same, which is actually what they're trying to optimize for. It's supposed to optimize for customer, not value for Amazon. And so therefore they're trying to sort of say, well, what would the customer experience be? As I understand it, but it wasn't the sort of question you even wanted to ask in the company, because I think, it's like two people know the algorithm. Because it's so, if you know the algorithm, you can manipulate it and try and capture the buy box. It's super complicated and game theoretic and everything, but it's really interesting work.
I assume you know that they've been fined 1.3 billion euros by the Italian competition authority because they've been bundling FBA and Amazon Prime together for sellers, almost making it more.
Yeah, I think the fine happened when I wasn't there, and I don't know the details. What I know, it was very interesting inside that part of the organization, because I'm sure that you can make mistakes and do things. So it's a really interesting thing, because actually what you're operating is two types of, you're operating a centralized economy. I was in the supply chain team that does the buying for Amazon itself, and you're operating that alongside a market economy that's occurring within the same fulfillment centers. And I know that the attitude of everyone there was never any talk of like leveraging one thing over the other, but it's a difficult thing to do. And I'm sure you could accidentally, I never heard anyone trying to do anything on purpose, but I'm sure it must be possible to accidentally do stuff. And accidental problems are as big as real intentional problems as well. So I don't know the details of that case, but it's a really interesting, because you're managing like a centralized economy alongside a market economy within one company. It's very interesting.
I don't want to take more time. We can discuss later, but there's also apparently the part of logistics, the market power in logistics that is coming from fulfilled by Amazon, and that's also one of the things that the Italian competition authority was a bit, not happy.
No, I think it's really, really interesting, because I think that in the US the argument is that as long as people aren't losing out competition, then it's not part of the competition authorities, because traditionally prices are lower, the consumer isn't missing out. But I think people are starting to question, is that the right basis? And it's interesting, I didn't know about the Italians sort of taking a different perspective. But overall, what you're seeing is the merging of digital competition and real-world physical competition. And I think at Amazon, it's where it's most interesting, because the two come together. Of course, for Google and Facebook, it's a sort of different, they don't really have physical products. But I think that, the UK, what's the new Digital Markets Authority? Yeah. So yeah, there's going to be some really interesting changes here.
Brilliant. So I think we should all thank Senay once more for a wonderful talk.